You are told every generation struggles, but for Gen Z, collapse starts earlier and it cuts deeper. 1 in 7 adolescents now lives with a mental disorder. Housing for young adults is increasingly described as severely unaffordable, and entry-level jobs are vanishing as AI takes over. Suicide has become the third leading cause of death for people their age. If Gen Z is not simply falling apart, what invisible force is pushing them to the edge? The answer is not what most people think, and it is where this story begins. The first wall Gen Z hits isn't just emotional, it's made of bricks, leases, and numbers that do not add up. In city after city, rent now claims more than half of a young person's paycheck. OECD data classifies housing for young adults as severely unaffordable, which means the basic act of moving out is financially out of reach for millions. For many, the only option is to stay in the childhood bedroom or return home after college, often not by choice, but because rent hikes or layoffs leave no other path. Surveys across Europe and North America show this is common. In some countries, more than half of young adults now live with their parents well into their 20s. Researchers have found that when returning home is forced by job loss or financial stress, it is linked to higher rates of depression and anxiety. The numbers tell a story, but so do the quiet moments. A landlord announces a $300 rent increase. A spreadsheet makes plain every cent spent on housing, food, and transit. One parent, remembering their own early independence, wonders aloud why they cannot just get a place and start their life. The answer sits in the gap between rising costs and stagnant wages. For Gen Z, adulthood is not delayed by choice. It is postponed by a system where the price of entry keeps climbing, and the first step, finding a home, already feels impossible. The job hunt for Gen Z doesn't start with a handshake. It starts with a spreadsheet. Hundreds of applications, most never answered. Even so-called entry-level jobs now demand years of experience, unpaid internships, or a list of skills that used to be learned on the job. In 2024, more than 60% of entry-level postings in fields like tech, finance, and administration require prior experience, up from less than 40% a decade ago. Employers lean on automated systems to scan resumes, instantly filtering out anyone without a track record, no matter how recent their degree. For those who do land interviews, the offer might be an unpaid internship, a contract gig, or a role so temporary it is gone before the first student loan payment is due. Automation and AI have changed the ground rules. Tasks that once gave new workers a foot in the door, such as data entry, basic coding, and content moderation, are now handled by algorithms or outsourced to software. OECD data shows that for jobs most exposed to automation, employment among 22 to 25-year-olds dropped by 6% from 2022 to 2025. Even as mid-career hiring grew, the classic first rung is missing. A composite graduate's log tells the story. 300 applications, mostly met with silence or the familiar line, "We're looking for someone with more experience." The stress builds as weeks turn to months. Rent is due, the inbox fills with rejections, and the sense of falling behind hardens into anxiety. This is not just about money, it is about being locked out of adulthood before the race even starts. Anxiety is not just a buzzword for Gen Z, it is a daily reality, and the numbers are hard to ignore. Recent research finds that rates of anxiety among Gen Z are about 4 times higher than those seen in baby boomers, and roughly double the rates in Gen X. These are not just survey blips or a side effect of more open conversations. The spike shows up in medical records, prescription rates, and therapy waitlists across the United States, the United Kingdom, and other wealthy countries. Globally, mental disorders now account for 15% of all health problems in adolescence, a burden that lands on Gen Z's shoulders before they have even left home. This is not about being oversensitive or weak. The pressure is relentless and comes from every direction. Job searches that go nowhere, housing that eats up paychecks, and a future that feels more uncertain with each passing year. For many, the symptoms are physical as much as emotional, with racing thoughts at night, trouble focusing during the day, and a constant sense of being on edge. A composite graduate says they lie awake at 3 in the morning, replaying every rejection email and wondering if things will ever get easier. The mind races, sleep disappears, and even small decisions feel overwhelming. Economists have started to put it plainly. Gen Z is not collapsing because they are exposed to less. They are collapsing because they are exposed to more instability, more risk, and fewer guarantees. The psychological cost of economic strain is no longer hidden. It is logged in sleepless nights, lost concentration, and the quiet, grinding exhaustion that follows young people from one day to the next. Scrolling through a feed that never ends, a Gen Z graduate watches the hours slip away. Nearly half of American teens say they are online almost constantly. More than any generation before, the pings and notifications are not just background noise, they are the pulse of daily life. Behind the screen, something else is happening. Global data show that about 78% of Gen Z report anxiety symptoms linked directly to digital media. Algorithms built to maximize engagement keep users locked into cycles of comparison and crisis. One platform engineer described the goal as keeping eyes on the feed no matter what. The result is endless streams of perfect bodies, perfect jobs, and disaster headlines, each swipe tightening the knot in the stomach. The mental toll is measurable. Studies consistently connect heavy smartphone and social media use with higher rates of distress, self-harm, and even suicidality among teens. For those spending more than 2 hours a day online, a threshold most Gen Zers pass before lunch, the risk climbs sharply. Sleep gets interrupted, concentration breaks down, and the sense of being overwhelmed becomes routine. But the pressure does not stop at the edge of the screen. Economic insecurity compounds it. New OECD wealth data find that younger cohorts now hold only about 5% of total household wealth in advanced economies, down from over 10% a generation ago. Even with higher education, many Gen Z adults are starting out poorer than their parents did. The safety nets that once caught young people, such as affordable housing, stable jobs, and reliable healthcare, have frayed. Instead, the system delivers digital overload and financial risk in equal measure. For many, it feels like drowning with no lifeline in sight. An economist put it bluntly, the gap is not just in wealth, it is in security and in hope. Gen Z is now the loneliest generation on record. Large-scale studies find that about half of young adults in the US report feeling serious or frequent loneliness, higher than any previous age group. In the UK, around a third of Gen Z say they do not get enough regular human interaction, and similar patterns show up across Europe and Asia. For many, the digital world offers a lifeline, but it rarely replaces the feeling of being seen or understood in person. A composite graduate describes finishing a day of job applications and scrolling through endless feeds, only to realize there is no one to call after midnight. The inbox is full, the group chats are busy, but the sense of connection does not reach beyond the screen. Even in crowded cities, the distance between people can feel as wide as ever. This epidemic of isolation is not lost on older generations, but the response often lands as blame. In surveys from 2021, over half of baby boomers describe Gen Z as lazier or more fragile than those who came before. Talk show panels and viral podcasts have turned this clash into a spectacle, boomers accusing and Gen Z defending. Yet as the data piles up on housing costs, wages, and mental health, public attitudes are beginning to shift. Content analysis shows a rise in headlines and debates that question the old story of laziness and ask whether the system itself is broken. At the heart of the debate is a simple question: is Gen Z falling apart, or are they just the first to admit that the old promises no longer hold? For a growing majority of young people, the answer is clear. Their struggles are not a sign of weakness, but a rational response to a world where connection, stability, and hope are increasingly out of reach. Right now, Gen Z faces record rates of anxiety, loneliness, and economic instability, not from personal failure, but from a system that has been outpaced by its own promises. Until structural change matches the scale of their reality, these signals won't fade. The cracks in the system are loud. This generation refuses to go unheard.